Imagine this. You're sitting at a cozy Thanksgiving dinner, and the mother you've loved your whole life looks you dead in the eyes and calls you a disgrace. You're standing there, clutching the ice-cold hand of your 8-year-old son, who just lost his father, while his own grandmother snatches the last dinner roll off his plate. She's kicking you both out into the brutal Chicago winter. Right now. And that is exactly what happened to me. Get out, and don't you dare show your face here again, my mother said. Her voice was calm, but it cut through me like the freezing wind howling outside. Thank God we don't have to put up with you two for another second. My sister Sophia took a sip of her wine, fiddled with her brand new designer bag, and went in for the kill. This family would be way more peaceful and a lot classier without a gold digger like you around. There was still gravy on my plate. My son Ben shriveled up next to me. His tiny lips were moving, whispering math formulas his dad taught him before he passed. It was his peace mantra, his way of trying not to cry. I didn't beg. I didn't shed a single tear. I just looked at those greedy faces, pulled something out of my purse that they always mocked as worthless scrap paper, and gave them a faint smile. Fine, but before I go, I'm leaving you the one Thanksgiving gift you've always wanted. It's just a shame you probably won't know how to value it. I slowly placed 2 cards on the table. Exactly 5 minutes later, as I was holding Ben's hand and walking out the door, my powerful mother and classy sister were on their hands and knees. They were frantically digging through applesauce on the floor, trembling, trying to piece together the scraps of paper they had just ripped up in a fit of rage. Are you wondering what secret was hidden in that scrap paper? What could make the coldest people on earth drop to their knees and beg? Keep listening, because the price they paid for their cruelty was more than anything you can imagine. To be honest, I hadn't even finished my turkey. Ben had only managed 2 bites of his bread roll. He wasn't even counting his peas like he usually does. His left hand was white-knuckled, gripping a small, tattered leather sketchbook, the last thing he had left of his dad, Ethan. Ethan had carved Dad's little explorer into the cover. At home, Ben draws vibrant spaceships, but here, he only drew meaningless gray lines. Every time the tension in the room spiked, he'd go back to whispering those math formulas. Sophia's 2 boys were the polar opposite. They were jumping on their chairs, screaming and interrupting everyone without a word of correction. Ben sat there as still as a ghost. Even at 8, he knew which kids were allowed to be kids, and which ones had to be invisible. Sitting across from me, Sophia was wearing a smile she'd clearly practiced in the mirror for hours. Mark sat next to her, obsessively adjusting his shiny silk tie. He kept checking his Rolex, making sure everyone saw it. Every time Sophia dropped a sarcastic comment, he'd give a slow, arrogant nod to the empty air, like he was granting us his royal blessing, even though nobody asked for his opinion. He glanced at Ben, then turned to me with that fake, practiced plastic smile. So Anna, are you still in that tighten-the-belt phase? Financial struggles must be tough. I heard Ethan's accident settlement wasn't exactly a jackpot, right? My mother dabbed the corner of her mouth with a silk napkin, looking like a portrait of cold elegance. My father just stared at his mashed potatoes, his focus so intense it was as if he were trying to disappear into the bowl. The night had been a minefield from the second we walked in. Petty jabs, indirect stabs. Oh, Anna, you look so tired. Aging has not been kind to you. My mother had exhaled the moment I stepped through the back door after driving for hours from Seattle. Sophia glanced at Ben's sketchbook and shrugged. Cute. Very basic. Kids should be playing with their cousins, not huddling over scraps of paper all night. I just smiled through it. I swallowed the bile, nodded, and pretended it didn't burn. Because it was Thanksgiving. Because Ben was watching. But then, somewhere between the green bean casserole and Sophia's third backhanded compliment, she decided she was done playing house. She slammed her fork onto the table. The sound was sharp, like a judge's gavel delivering a death sentence. We need to talk, she said. She leaned back, looking down her nose at me. This situation has become unbearable, and Mom and Dad agree. Anna, you need to leave, and don't bother coming back. My father wouldn't look up. My mother jumped in instantly. Thank God I won't have to look at your face anymore. I blinked, looking at my dad for a lifeline. He didn't give me one. His eyes were just tired, silent, and complicit. Right then, one of Sophia's sons sprinted past and snatched the sketchbook out of Ben's hands. "Let me see." "No, please." Ben's voice was trembling. "Ooh, rip." The only page Ben had dared to draw on, a tiny, hopeful star, was torn in half. He stared at the jagged paper, his eyes welling with tears he was too terrified to let fall. Sophia just scoffed. "Cheap paper, tears easy. Don't be such a drama queen, kid." I stopped. My world slowed down. My gaze shifted from pure agony to a cold, dead stillness. That silence? That was the exact moment I officially declared my family dead in my heart. I put my fork down. "Ben," I said softly, my eyes locked on him. "Honey, go grab your coat and your backpack. We're leaving." He didn't hesitate for a second. He slid off his chair like he'd been waiting for that permission his whole life. "Okay, Mommy," he whispered. No argument, no crying, just pure relief. As he hurried toward the hallway, the speed of his retreat made me feel physically ill. My son had been suffocating in this house much longer than I was willing to admit. A wave of sour heat rose in my throat. The smell of turkey and gravy suddenly felt suffocating, like I was being buried alive. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my nails dug into the old wood, fighting to keep my body from shaking. The moment Ben disappeared around the corner, the atmosphere shifted. Sophia crossed her arms, looking smug. "Good. That's settled then." Mark sighed like he'd just finished a boring business meeting. My mother's lips thinned. "Anna, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I stared at them, and then my face did something I didn't expect. I smiled, a smile of total liberation. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed the items I'd hidden behind the serving platters: a homemade apple pie, a hand-knitted scarf, and 2 thick envelopes. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The exact moment they branded me a burden was the moment I stopped being their savior. I set them on the table. "Ethan's final gifts," I told them. On the front of each envelope, I'd printed an old family photo with a caption: "For Mom, for my sister. All that's left from Ethan and Anna." Sophia raised a cynical eyebrow. "What's this?" Mark scoffed. "You think some DIY crafts are going to fix this?" My mother actually laughed. "Anna, what are you doing? This is pathetic." I looked her straight in the eye. "Pathetic?" My father finally spoke, his voice hollow. "If you're using Ethan's name to make us feel guilty." "Oh no," I cut him off. "This isn't about guilt. This is about a choice." Sophia stood up. "You think we need your leftovers? You think anyone here is going to miss a single thing about you?" My mother didn't hesitate. She swept her hand across the table, knocking the pie and the scarf onto the dirty floor. She sneered. "Thank God I never have to see your face or this worthless trash ever again." Then, she grabbed her envelope and ripped it down the middle. Snap. The sound of the paper tearing was as sharp as a gunshot. Then it was Sophia's turn. She snatched hers, shredded it, and threw the pieces into the mess of apple pie and floor dirt. My father's face tightened. Mark sat up straight. The triumph on Sophia's face began to crack as she saw the strange color of the paper inside the fancy cardstock. I watched the scraps lie there in the sweet apple filling, certified checks worth a fortune, now nothing but trash. I looked at them and made sure they heard every word. "You tore it apart with your own hands. Don't you dare regret it later." I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just turned my back. Ben was waiting in the hallway, coat zipped, his dad's little explorer backpack on his shoulders. I took his tiny hand in mine. "Let's go," I said. The Chicago winter air hit my lungs, and for the first time in years, I could finally breathe. As I stepped off the porch, I instinctively glanced back through the window. I saw my mother bending down, ready to sweep away the trash on the floor, but then she froze. Her eyes locked onto a scrap of paper soaked in applesauce. It had a word printed on it: bank. In a heartbeat, Sophia lunged for it. Their faces shifted in real time, from smugness to confusion, and then to a pale, bone-chilling horror as the numbers $500,000 and $300,000 began to emerge from the ruins. Through the glass, I saw my mother's mouth hang open like she was screaming in a silent panic. The door behind me slammed open. "Anna!" The footsteps were frantic, stumbling. Sophia's voice hit a pitch I'd never heard. Wait, come back." Ben's hand tightened in mine as we reached the car. "Anna." My mother's voice was shattering. "Please, you can't do this." My father's voice finally broke the silence. Anna, don't go, let's talk. I got into the driver's seat. Ben climbed in beside me. Through the rear-view mirror, I saw a scene that was as chaotic as it was pathetic. My mother and Sophia were literally crawling on the floor, desperately grabbing at pieces of paper sticky with sweet applesauce. They were using rolls of cheap Scotch tape, trying to force the fragments back together. But the sauce had soaked into the delicate security paper, turning it into mush. In her panic, Sophia tried to peel back a piece of tape she'd misaligned and rip. The top layer of the paper with the serial numbers and official signatures was stripped away. They were destroying their only shot at that money with the same frantic greed that had driven me away. I started the engine and drove off, leaving them to fade into the darkness. The streetlights blurred across the wet windshield. The silence in the car felt thicker and heavier than all the screaming we'd left behind. Ben huddled into the corner of his seat, still clutching his torn sketchbook. We checked into a small, warm hotel nearby. When the door clicked shut, the silence finally became terrifying. Ben sat on the edge of the bed, refusing to let go of the ruins of his book. He whispered, "Mommy, Grandma doesn't like me, does she?" My heart shattered as a single tear rolled down his cheek. He continued, his voice small but certain. "She's like the witch in Tangled, Mom. The one who pretends to love Rapunzel just to stay in the tower and steal her magic hair. She only wanted the things Dad left behind, right?" I pulled him into a hug, promising him we'd find a warmer place, a place without witches who hide behind the name of family. In the shadows of the hotel room, I opened my suitcase and found a spare knitted scarf. I saw a single blue thread I'd intentionally woven in, the color of the shirt Ethan wore in our wedding photos. I had hoped my mother would see that sincerity when she wore it. I stroked the fabric, the tears finally coming, and then I walked over and dropped it into the hotel trash can. I was done. My sister, Sophia, is 6 years younger than me. That number means more than you think. Sophia was the golden child before she even had teeth. I usually got the hand-me-downs or gifts that were so practical they were insulting. A discounted pajama set, a cookbook. And then I'd be handed a trash bag and told to clean up the mountain of wrapping paper Sophia had shredded. When you grow up in a broken system, you just assume that's how gravity works. I moved to Seattle for college thinking distance would heal everything. I met Ethan in my mid-20s. Ethan was the one who pulled me out of those ashes. He was a civil engineer, meticulous with every safety blueprint, and his unconditional kindness taught me my own worth. But in a cruel twist of fate, Ethan was killed in a horrific car accident on his way to a construction site. An investigation later proved the crash could have been prevented if the trucking company hadn't cut corners on safety. That massive settlement was the final, painful gift Ethan left for Ben and me. On our third date, I told him about how my mother and sister used to laugh at me like it was a normal story. Ethan didn't laugh. "That's not normal at all," he said. "Anna, that's not okay." No one had ever said that to me before. We were married a year later. My parents played the supportive roles in public. Sophia played the happy sister on Instagram. Mark, who was just her boyfriend then, joked that Ethan was brave for marrying into this family. Ethan just smiled politely and didn't take the bait. He was proud of his work. He loved building things that lasted, solving problems most people didn't even know existed. He spent countless hours on massive job sites in Seattle. The pay was great, but because I was still desperately trying to buy my family's love, Ethan and I secretly supported my parents for years. Nothing flashy, just a steady $200 every month, like a small financial life support system. Sometimes it was more, a broken furnace, a high utility bill, or some emergency that miraculously popped up right after Sophia bought another designer bag. My parents never truly thanked me once. They just accepted it, like it was a natural resource they were entitled to. Sophia would even steal the credit in her own twisted way. "See, I told you guys we'd handle it," she'd say, acting like she was the one working overtime to pay their bills. Mark would just nod and add, "Families gotta look out for each other, right?" I'd swallow my rage while Ethan squeezed my hand under the table, his eyes reminding me that I wasn't the crazy one. Then, 2 years ago, the world collapsed. Ethan was killed on his way to a site. The investigation later proved it was a preventable accident. corporate negligence, cutting corners to save time. I still remember the bone-chilling cold that took over my body when I got that call. After the funeral, reality got cruel, fast. Ben still needed school clothes, dinners, and bedtime stories. Suddenly, I was carrying it all alone. That $200 a month for my parents had to stop immediately. My family noticed the missing money way faster than they noticed my grief. Sophia started asking if I was being financially responsible, as if Ethan's death was just a budgeting issue. Mark made jokes about how the insurance payout must be a sweet deal and laughed. But one month I had no choice. Ben got sick. I had to miss work. My car broke down. I asked them for a small amount just to cover the gap. My parents sent a pittance. And immediately, my mother posted a status on Facebook with a sad emoji. "Sometimes you have to sacrifice for family," she wrote. "No matter how hard it is, still praying for Anna to learn how to stand on her own 2 feet again." Sophia commented instantly, "We're always here for you, sis." Mark gave it a triumphant like. They turned me into a useless moocher, while ignoring the years we had literally fed them. I didn't even bother correcting the story. I kept a secret that could change everything: the insurance settlement and Ethan's estate. It didn't come through right away. There were lawyers, mountains of paperwork, and endless delays from the trucking and insurance companies. I had to hire a specialist because I couldn't handle the bureaucratic red tape while I was shattering into a million pieces over my husband. And then, just recently, right before Thanksgiving, it was finally settled. A staggering amount, $3.2 million. I had planned to give $800,000 of it to them, split into 2 checks. $500,000 for my parents and $300,000 for Sophia, to help them pay off their debts and retire. That's why I drove for hours from Seattle to Chicago, carrying the hope of a fresh start. If your heart aches for a kindness that was trampled upon, hit subscribe to support us. Your presence gives us the strength to keep going. Thank you for standing with us, but they chose to throw me out on the street before they ever found out the truth. The number $200,000 glowing on my banking app made my palms break into a cold sweat. But instead of celebrating, I found myself scrolling through my old transfer history, all those $200 payments over the years. The secret help when their heater broke, when the electricity spiked, when Sophia bragged about her new bag. This time will be different. I told myself while knitting that blue threaded scarf. This time, maybe they'll actually see me. I hid those 2 special cards in the kitchen, never imagining that a few hours later, they would tear them into scraps and stomp them into the applesauce. When the truth finally bled out from those sticky scraps on the floor, they chased me all the way down the driveway. It's funny how greed can create such a sudden sense of urgency. "Anna," my mother screamed. "Stop, please, take it back." I didn't stop the car. I didn't even roll down the window. I just drove until Ben whispered, "Mommy, where are we going?" I pulled into the parking lot of a real hotel. Warm lobby, clean scent. Because if I couldn't give my son a family full of love, I could at least give him a safe room and a hot chocolate. Ben kicked off his shoes and climbed onto the bed like he'd been holding his breath all day. I sat on the edge of the other bed and stared at my hands. For a minute, neither of us said a word. Then Ben said quietly, "Grandma doesn't like me, does she, Mom?" My throat felt like it was full of glass. "Ben, she doesn't." "She really doesn't," Ben interrupted, his voice small but steady. "She's like the witch in Tangled, Mom. She pretended to love Rapunzel just to get her magic and stay in the tower. Grandma only wanted the things Dad left behind, right?" When I didn't answer, Ben kept going. "She likes Sophia's kids. She always gives them the best toys. She always hugs them first." I felt a sharp, burning sting behind my eyes. "That's not your fault, Ben." He shrugged, like a kid who had already decided the world was unfair and there was nothing he could do about it. "Not my fault," he repeated, as if testing the words to see if they were true. "And you don't ever have to try and make people like you by staying silent, or by acting perfect and shrinking yourself down." Ben looked at me like he was hearing something completely foreign. "But Mom, you do that all the time." I froze. He wasn't wrong. Kids don't miss a thing. I swallowed hard, pulled him close, and whispered into his hair, "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy was wrong." Ben looked up. Can we watch Tangled again, Mom? I want to see the part where Rapunzel finally steps out of the tower. We sat together on that strange hotel bed, eating junk food from a vending machine, watching Rapunzel cut ties with the woman who faked love just to keep her trapped. Ben was mesmerized. His eyes lit up seeing her finally walk on the grass. He didn't say much, but the way he squeezed my hand and laughed at Maximus the horse told me he got it. Grandma's tower wasn't where we belonged anymore. Finally, the weight of the night seemed to lift, and Ben drifted off, sprawled across the bed like a peaceful little starfish. Once the room went quiet, Ben's words kept echoing in my head, a cold splash of reality that washed away my last bit of hesitation. I opened my suitcase and took out that spare knitted scarf with the blue thread, the color of Ethan's wedding shirt, something I had hoped my mother would cherish. I stroked it one last time, let the tears fall, and then dropped it firmly into the hotel trash can. I was done with them. Right then, my phone lit up. Mom. I picked up, feeling an eerie sense of calm. Her voice came through, faking concern but sounding breathless. Where are you and Ben? Let us come get you. It's freezing out there, honey. Just come home. Sophia's voice chimed in the background, sobbing like a C-list actress. Anna, I'm so sorry. I messed up. Please come back. We're family. I looked at Ben sleeping soundly and said, low and firm, we're safe. Don't call again. But the phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It was desperate, aggressive, like they were losing their minds on the other end. I picked up once more. Anna, please, my mother rushed out. We didn't mean it. In the background, I heard Sophia's voice, sharp as ever. Make her come back now. Then my father, deep and tense, put it on speaker. Anna, my father said, this is ridiculous. Come back and fix this mess. Sophia snapped, exactly. You don't get to just throw something like that in our faces, let it get ruined, and then walk away like it's nothing. She was still playing games, using passive language to avoid admitting that she and Mom were the ones who ripped the checks. My father's voice rose. Anna, you have to fix this. You can just write new ones. You can call the bank right now. We tried to tape them back together, but the paper is peeling off. There it was. Not an apology, not love, just pure panic over the money they had destroyed with their own hands. I took a deep breath. No, not tonight. Not ever, after what you all said. I hung up, flipped the phone face down, and silenced it. The next morning, I sent my mother one final text. It was a photo of Ben's broken colored pencils, the ones Sophia's kid had trashed the night before. I wrote, you broke things that are worth way more than money. Money can be replaced. A child's trust cannot. Never call me again. Outside, the Chicago traffic splashed through the wet streets. Inside, Ben was safe. And somewhere in that old house, they were staring at two ripped, applesauce-stained cards, held together by messy tape, realizing they had just thrown away the biggest break of their lives. A few days later, everything went silent. No calls, no texts. I knew it wasn't because they were sorry. Through a mutual friend, I heard they had rushed those taped-up soggy checks to the bank in a final act of desperation. The teller just shook his head. He explained that physically damaged certified checks with peeling security paper and mangled signatures were worthless. To reissue them, the investment company and insurers would need to start a process that takes 12 to 24 months. And the non-negotiable requirement? A fresh signed consent form from the original account holder. Me. They turned ghost white when they heard that. That same day, I posted a short update from the quiet corner of a different bank branch. Today is a good day to start a new journey for my son's future. I knew they'd see it. It was my silent declaration of the end. The silence behind those unanswered calls was now just the sound of greed curdling into pure, bitter resentment. At first, that silence felt like a rescue. It was as if the world had finally stopped shaking long enough for me to catch my breath. Ben went back to his old rhythm. Breakfast, homework, repeat. He stopped asking about Grandma. He didn't bring up that Thanksgiving night at all, which, in a way, was more heartbreaking than if he had. I unpacked the suitcase we'd taken on that fateful trip. Folding Ben's tiny sweaters, I felt my stomach knot with rage all over again. Then came day 3. I opened Facebook, and there it was. A post from Sophia. A photo of her in our parents' living room, smiling in front of the Christmas tree like she'd just won a gold medal. Mark was standing right beside her. My mother was in the background holding a ceramic mug, playing the part of the doting grandmother. The caption was a mile long. Of course it was. It started with family and betrayal and ended with some people showing their true colors. She didn't use my name at first, which was worse, like I was some dirty rumor. Then the clause came out. Anna showed up on Thanksgiving looking for a handout. When we tried to set healthy boundaries, she insulted our parents and stormed out. Some people will take everything and still demand more. The comments poured in. Aunts, cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Praying for your parents, one wrote. Some people are so ungrateful, said another. Poor grandma and grandpa. Then Sophia dropped the hammer. And yes, for those wondering, Anna got a massive settlement after Ethan died, but she hasn't shared a single penny with her own family. She'd rather punish her parents than act like a decent human being. I stared at the screen, my hands turning to ice. She was implying I was profiting off my husband's death. That I was lucky. That I owed them a cut of my grief. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing again. The flying monkeys, as psychologists call the people manipulated into attacking a victim, had been unleashed. First, an aunt, I think you should apologize. Your parents are devastated. Then a cousin, Sophia said you went crazy and ripped up money in front of everyone. Is it true you got a settlement? That's disgusting. Even a random person I barely remembered messaged. Family is all we have. Then, the ultimate low blow. An anonymous tip to Child Protective Services claiming Ben was in an unstable environment, a calculated move by Sophia's lawyer to back me into a corner. A few days later, a formal legal letter arrived from her office demanding I clarify my inheritance assets, claiming Sophia had relatable interests. The sheer audacity made my blood run cold. They didn't just want the money, they wanted to use my son as a bargaining chip. Instead of panicking, I dug through my old archives and found an email Sophia sent 10 years ago, whining about how our parents favored me and how she felt like an outsider. I screenshotted it and sent it straight to her lawyer with the subject line, "Evidence of your client's deep family bond over the last decade." The contrast between her current greed and her past resentment was the only answer he needed. I didn't reply to the posts immediately. I made lunch for Ben. I helped him with his math. I watched him draw vibrant stars in his new sketchbook and wondered, what kind of adult looks at a child and decides he doesn't deserve a seat at the table? By the end of the day, I decided to stop being silent. Silence had never protected me. It only made me an easier target. I opened my banking app. I screenshotted every single transfer from the last few years, $200 every month, steady as a heartbeat. I found my mother's old Facebook post from right after Ethan died, the one where she bragged about her charity toward me. Then I posted. No whining, no novel, just the raw, jagged truth. Sophia, I wrote, you kicked me and Ben out on Thanksgiving in front of an 8-year-old child. Mom agreed. Dad stayed silent. Then I unleashed the receipts, the years of secret financial support I never breathed a word about. Right next to it, I posted my mother's sacrifice post and her fake sad emojis. This is the face of my family, I wrote. We fed my parents every month for years. I never posted about it. I never asked for a thank you. And this is what happened when I actually needed help. They treated me like a criminal. Finally, I added the photo of Ben's broken pencils and wrote, you broke things that are worth way more than money. Money can be taped back together, even if it's messy and worthless like the checks you're currently crying over at the bank. But a child's trust? You can't fix that. Don't ever call me again. I hit post, switched off my phone and curled up on the sofa to watch cartoons with Ben. It didn't take long. Within an hour, the tide in Sophia's comments started to turn. Wait, Anna supported you guys for years? Why were you bragging about helping her when she was the one feeding you? You kicked her out and now you're clawing for her late husband's settlement? The ground crumbled beneath them instantly. Sophia tried to fight back, then got angry, then started deleting comments. My mother tried to DM me. My father stayed silent, but I saw his sister, my aunt. This is disgusting. Anna and Ben didn't deserve this. Sophia's post was edited over and over until it finally vanished into thin air. The next morning, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach knot. My parents were there. Sophia and Mark were lurking behind them like backup. In my mother's hand was an apple pie, and I recognized it immediately. It was the same pie she'd swiped onto the floor, now scooped back up and smoothed over with a fresh layer of whipped cream to hide the cruelty. I opened the door just enough to block the frame. "Anna," my mother said, her voice terrifyingly sweet. "Hi, honey?" I didn't answer. Sophia forced a smile. Not the smug one from Thanksgiving, but that fake, desperate grin people use when they're about to beg. "We just want to talk," she said. "Everyone's calmed down now." My father cleared his throat. "We're family." My mother held the pie up like a peace offering. "I didn't mean those things, Anna," she rushed out. I looked her dead in the eye. "You meant them enough to say them." Sophia's eyes flashed. "It was just a heat of the moment thing." "A moment," I repeated. "A moment where you looked at my son and decided he didn't belong." Mark stepped forward. "Come on, Anna. Ben needs his cousins. He needs a family." Ben appeared behind me, clutching my shirt. My mother's face lit up instantly. "Benny, hi, sweetie. Come give Grandma a hug." Ben didn't budge. His tiny hand tightened on my jeans. Sophia's smile turned brittle. "See? This is why we need to be together. We can fix this. That check. You just need to re-sign it, and it'll be like none of this ever happened." I could hear the unspoken truth. We need the money. We need this door open so we can squeeze you again. Right behind them, I caught a glimpse of a man in a suit, Sophia's lawyer, waiting for a legal opening. They weren't here for a reconciliation. They were here for a recovery of assets. I took a deep breath. "No," I said. My mother blinked. "Anna, what do you mean, no?" "No," I repeated, calm and final. "You don't get to throw us out in the cold and then show up with a pie covered in the scars of your greed, pretending to be decent people. You don't get to touch my son after proving you don't even consider him blood." My father's jaw set. "You're being cruel." I looked at him. "You're the ones who taught me how." Sophia's mask slipped in a heartbeat. Pure rage and greed took over. She screamed, "You're going to take all that money to your grave? You selfish butch." I gave her a small smile. I spent years doing the one thing I regret, trying to please people who never loved me. Not anymore. I pulled that old family photo out of my pocket, the one I'd rescued from the scraps on the floor. Right in front of them, I slowly tore it into pieces. The dry snap of the paper echoed in the silent hallway. I stepped back and shut the door. Locked it. For the first time in my life, locking a door didn't feel like an act of malice. It felt like protection. A week later, I booked 2 tickets to Hawaii. "Let's go exploring, explorer," I told Ben, and his smile lit up the room. On Waikiki Beach, the warm sun started to heal the jagged edges of my heart. I posted a photo of us laughing in the golden light with the caption, "Where we belong, the present and the future." We ate ice cream, explored coral reefs, and enjoyed a freedom that didn't require anyone's fake approval. 8 months have passed, long enough for the noise to die down and the truth to settle. The settlement was $3.2 million. I had planned to give them $800,000, enough to wipe my parents' debt and let them retire in peace, enough for Sophia to have a real fresh start. They didn't get a single cent. Instead, I bought a house in cash. It's not a mansion, but it's sturdy and quiet. Ben has a college fund, a trust, and a safety net, so his future never has to depend on people who value him based on convenience. In our new home, Ben's room is covered in those vibrant space paintings he used to be too afraid to draw. Shining rockets, distant planets, stars exploding in color. No more shy gray lines. He draws loud, he draws free, and he draws with the pure joy of a child who is finally allowed to be himself. He's finally out of the tower. And so am I. Money doesn't erase the pain of losing Ethan. But the difference is that now, our grief isn't suffocating under the weight of financial fear. We're still sad, but we're safe. Ben smiles more. He sleeps through the night. One afternoon, while decluttering, I found that spare knitted scarf with the blue thread, the color of Ethan's wedding shirt. It was the one I hesitated to throw away in that freezing hotel room 8 months ago. Standing in my own warm home, I felt its softness one last time, then gently placed it in the trash. At that exact moment, I received a letter from my father. I did my best to keep the peace. I couldn't take sides. I gave a cold smile and tossed the half-read letter into the bin. I didn't need him to take sides. I just needed to protect my son. I've truly let go. Ben knows this house is his. He's finally home. Through the grapevine, I heard what happened to them. My parents had to sell the house. Their retirement plans? Gone. Sophia and Mark ended up in a bitter divorce, fueled by constant fighting over the money they let slip through their fingers. Greed turned that family home into a debt trap with no exit. What really destroyed them wasn't just the lack of money, it was knowing exactly how close they were to that $800,000. One evening, while scrolling through Facebook for recipes, I stumbled across a post in a Free Stuff Chicago group. A photo made my thumb freeze on the screen. It was the old oak dining table, the exact same table where we sat for that fateful Thanksgiving dinner. The wine glass rings were still visible on the surface. The caption was rushed, free. U-Haul, must go today. No explanation, no nostalgia. I zoomed in and saw the corner where Ben used to huddle, where his sketchbook was torn apart. I scrolled past it. No comment. No reaction. I just let it go, like it was a piece of junk belonging to a total stranger. They taught me the most expensive lesson of my life, that true love sometimes starts with a door slamming shut. And that final snap? It wasn't the sound of paper tearing. It was the sound of liberation. Family isn't just about blood. Family is the choice you make every single day. If the story of my son and I touched a corner of your heart, please support us by hitting the subscribe button. Your presence is more than just a sub. It's a powerful message that kindness and self-respect are worth spreading. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to stand in the light. If you were in my shoes, after being kicked out into the freezing night by your own blood, insulted and used, would you have opened the door for that fake, late-to-the-game apple pie? Or would you let it fade into eternal silence? Comment below. I'd open the door. Or I'd lock it forever, and tell me why. I read every single one.